Here, Tracy from Clayton Silver Springs, who gave us the venue again this morning for free. A great supporter, as you know, for those who were here at the last event again, there was another great spread. She has left a bucket there for the Marie Keating Foundation. You know, if people could throw in €1 or €2 there, I know not everybody has cash, but it'd be appreciated if we could give something back. So a small gesture there to support that. We are hoping to have another event in October, and we will focus that one completely for the Marie Keating Foundation as well that time, which is a charity that the hotel here supports themselves. So again, thanks to Tracy. It's very simple. Everybody's name here begins with a D, bar me. So David, Dan, keep going, Dennis, Dave, I don't know, there's all these anyway, that's all I know. So they'll introduce themselves in a minute as we get going anyway. It's basically a questions and answer system as we go along. The lads will introduce themselves and tell you what they're about, and I suppose what we were trying to do was base it on the run into the marathon, and like as we know, people came for the run this morning, and nothing people like more runners than talking about running, I suppose, if they're not running. Dave, sorry about last week and the Cork Camogie team and putting the Waterford ladies in the place, but we might as well get that out of the way as well.
I didn't lose too much sleep over it.
So I think, will we start with just let everybody introduce themselves and take it from there?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Damien O'Sullivan, and I'm the owner of Bioreach Wellness and Recovery Suite, based over in Poolduff Road there. So cryo spas, infrared saunas, Normatec compression boots, which we have there for people to try out throughout the morning, and contrast water therapy, all that kind of stuff. My own background is I'm a strengthening and conditioning coach, and I'm a qualified nutritionist as well. So it's a nice handy, I suppose, background there for opening and operating a recovery suite. I suppose we're going to delve into each thing, so will I just pass along, because there's no point in me having a microphone for half an hour here and just running along, so I'll...
Hi, my name is Daniel Murphy. I'm the owner of Apex Nutrition. I've been working and owning Apex Nutrition now for about 3.5 years. I have a background in public health, nutrition, and also a master's in dietetics. Specialise in areas like weight loss, performance, muscle building, clinical nutrition as well too, do a little bit of that. Just like this morning, hopefully and give you a good overview of marathon nutrition, and like feel free to ask any questions afterwards as well too.
Hi everyone, my name is Dennis Lorden. My own business is Fusion Performance. I work across 3 areas, so I work with businesses, schools and elite level sports teams, all with a view of improving performance. Most recently I was with the Waterford senior footballers and minor footballers, their sports psychology consultant, and I'm doing the same now with the Cork City ladies. Looking forward to sharing what I can with you. If you have any questions, ask away. There's cards outside, an email list to sign up to the newsletter will be going out. Might be, or there will be some tips coming up to marathon and stuff if you're interested, and looking forward to getting started.
Morning guys, my name is David McCarthy. No business in particular as such, only in the business of running. So I just did a lot of running myself, back in the day, still running, doing more coaching as well now. And just happy to be here with you this morning, and maybe just chat a bit about whatever it is you want to know about running.
Pretty much. Right, so lads, so we're going to break it up into 3 sections. The first section, and we're going to go from literally the 12 weeks of training up to the week before the marathon, we'll say. We might just take a 5-minute break after that. If anyone has any questions for the lads, they can walk away. Then we'll come back and we're going to do race week and post race, and we'll just get the lads information on all of it. Again, as Brian has said, this is an open forum. Put your hand up if you need to, just so that we can see you. If not, we have the pieces of papers over there that people can write questions, or you can give Andy or Jonathan a shout if you need to as well. There are 2 gophers today. Andy's been called worse before, so that's right. So I think we're just going to start off. Does anyone have any questions before we start?
Just eventual St. Finn bars and...
Yes, of course, yes. And St. Finn bars, the lads are down the back there. Thank you very much for coming. And Lumberstown as well are, all up here. So obviously the race is coming up in the next few weeks, and we've done competitions and they've kindly come along today to give information about their races as well. We've lovely maps and the whole lot of it. So in the break and at the end, make sure you go over, and you might get signed up as well for yourselves. But give the lads a shout as well for that. But I think we'll start straight off. So Dave, I'll start with you. How we'll do it is we're looking for hints and tips really for the 12 weeks of training. On your side, we'll come along with the lads on yours. So we're going from the coaching side for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I suppose any race goal, people always have a certain amount of weeks they're preparing out for. So whether it's a marathon block, half marathon, 10 miles, 5k, and if it's 12 weeks, you're talking about, your 3 months. And I suppose the one thing I always say about that is we always like to plan out a lot of training to our race goal, but we always remember our race goal is at the end of the training block. And the most important thing for me is that you're approaching the racing block, yes, at your fittest, but also feeling fresh. So I think a lot of the time we can overtrain leading into races. And like my thing is like you're getting on the starting line, and what's maybe more important than having an extra few miles in the legs is actually feeling fresh. I think probably 90% of us can say we've probably stood on the starting line of a race and kind of approached it thinking, yeah, I'm not actually feeling my best here. I've probably felt my best 2 or 3 weeks prior to that. So I think it's about consistency. I also think, from my experience in the sport, I like to, maybe sometimes people come to me for coaching and they say, I want to train for this one particular race. In 3 months' time, and like nobody has a magic wand. You can't. You're not going to knock minutes off in 12 weeks. I think the healthiest approach to running, both for an enjoyment factor and just for an improvement of yourself, is to actually set a goal of a race season. Because a lot of things can go wrong in the build up to races, even if training is right. Family life, people aren't we're not full-time athletes here. There's a lot of other stresses in life. People can have kids, you can pick up sicknesses and that, and you feel then like if you've only had the one race in mind, you feel like it's just been worth nothing in the end if the training has been interrupted. So I always like to think, plan a few races out, allow yourself more than 12 weeks to measure what you have to give. I think you should a couple of training cycles. I think I always notice that you need to go do a training block, you need to do a race, and sometimes when we do that race, I always feel your biggest level up in fitness comes after racing, not after just the training. And so sometimes if people actually stayed a bit consistent with their training after their race goal, they'd probably find that they'd run a lot better. So I think it's just slow and steady wins the race with running. I always say, of all the endurance sports out there, it's probably one of the hardest, because if you take a triathlete, for example, and you take swimming and biking, they're not half as load-bearing as running. So running has serious impact on the body. And training tires you, and I just think a lot of the time we're always thinking about getting in the miles, getting in the training, and we don't prioritize recovery enough. And that's the biggest thing I've learned from my running career. I think far too often I have left it all in training, and when I look back, then it's a bit disappointing, because you put in all the hard work for race day. And I think what's most important, the enjoyment, I think comes from when you run the race, and regardless of the time, it's that you have that feeling of what's light for you within your body when you're running, and that comes from freshness. And to enjoy the experience of the race as well, as opposed to just the time.
Dave, you just said there as well, obviously setting out a race plan, and I think we're going to cover a lot that with yourself then as well, race goals and things like that. Is it ideal for people to sit down and let you go, right, 12 weeks, and pencil in the races on, so they go, right, I am now focusing on that. But I also think to actually take them races seriously, as opposed to going in and saying, I'm going to do that on tired legs, blah, 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 but actually to concentrate on the race as well.
Yeah, no, definitely planning is everything when it comes to it, because it's very easy to get aimless with running. It's very easy to say, I'll add on another mile, or I'll do this, or then, maybe you're not taking your recovery runs as serious, and maybe you're doing a session but you're coming out the next day and you're not really going as easy on your recovery run. So planning is everything. And that's then what leaves you accountable, and it gives you direction. because it's, again, like I said, like it's just easy to be getting in the miles and everything, but have your plan. Like anytime I'm preparing for anything, the way I work it personally for myself right now is that like I just have a weekly training plan that I know I can do all year round, and that way then I can race from a 5k to a half marathon, and that allows me to consistently get fit. So like I think no matter how technical or specialised I get with a 12-week block, an average week over 52 weeks into the year is going to pay off any day of the week.
Like you're not doing yourself any, you're just saying you tip along, like anyone who doesn't know, David just ran 14:25 on Friday, just to win the 5k. So that's all, and he's only training 2 months, is it? But look, I think that's the thing with running as well, it's all relevant. Like consistent training is the most important thing. And Daniel, I come to you because obviously you're going to talk a lot about goal setting and everything like that. So from your aspect in the 16 weeks, how important is the goal setting at the start of the block?
It's vital. I suppose you want to set out where you want to go. It's not necessarily just going, I want to win a race, but what are the goals from it? So if I was working with an athlete, we'd sit down and we kind of find a why, what motivates them. You'd be looking in at setting SMART goals, so it's really specific instead of just going and being, I suppose, aimless with it, going, I want to win a race and run at whatever time. And I think it's important as well. I've written down notes, some great points, and I just kind of want to build on a few of them. You kind of mentioned on the line, we can say, I'm not feeling great, and that voice can get into your head. And the problem with that is, especially when you're under stress, that voice can grow, and running a marathon is going to be hard enough anyway. What you don't want is that negative voice in your head, because our brain will automatically look to protect us essentially. So if you're going through a heavy marathon, the brain will kind of recognise any torn muscles or whatever it may be, and there's a fight or flight response then. So what you don't want then is you kind of going, I'm going to stop, and as we talked about the last night, and I suppose with the goal setting, it's really important as well to, I suppose, look at the overall balance. So looking at a lot of people here are all varying in different ranges or age ranges, so different responsibilities. Some people will have kids, some people won't, some people could be single and they could throw all their time into it. But I suppose it's really important just to remember the balance piece. And something with that at the start of your goals is we're working with an athlete, and I would encourage them to journal. So then you're looking at, you're writing down your goals, you're writing down how you feel, you're writing down, I suppose, your reference points. So if you're training 3 months before a marathon, you obviously have to get the miles into the legs. So that's going to be tough, But every mile you do, or every distance you go further from session 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, that's a reference point. So straight away you know now that, okay, I can do 10k. It's hard, but I can do it. And I think that's really important.
But also I think that, look, you tapped on the journal there, and I do think, I don't use it by the way, I never have, but I see the site which is very important, because you can go out and do a 10-mile run tomorrow, and you write down, I felt great, the conditions were brilliant. You look back then, and 2 months later you will do the exact same run and you're worse, but you kind of go back, you're like, oh geez, the weather was way worse. Strava won't really show you that at a focal point straight away, but a journal you're writing down, you will get that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do, so you can see the flyer here, so we'll say, using that as an example, every week you will have a self-reflection on your events. You'll be looking at what you've done. So if you're after running your training distance, and it's difficult conditions or whatever else, all that has to be logged, and it's important to look back in that then, so that again it's a reference point that you build up, and you'll actually hear me say that. I think I said it a lot on Friday night, and I suppose it's just the biggest thing as well is that while you want to get your certain time, which would be great, and your personal best, which would be absolutely fantastic, you still will finish the race, which is a massive achievement. If you're in the season where you've got a number of races, there's always the next race. You might disagree with this if you're going for results, but it's really important not to be hard on yourself as well, because I think a lot of people might agree that we can be our own harshest critic. That voice in your head, and I'm not good enough, or I found your point on Friday really interesting. Do you want to tell him?
So, not very good at this. Look, we did an interview on Friday with the four of us, and that's going out on the podcast tomorrow for anyone who's going through it. And the one point I made was the three lads. It's an area of great fascination with, but would do 1 week of it and then go, fuck it, I don't care, I don't do it anymore. I just lose interest in it. And Aoife would know this all too well. Cork Marathon last year, and anyone who listened to the show would know, there was a point where we got down to the straight road and I would just stop dead. Body was actually okay.
When you started praying.
Yeah.
He never told us that now.
Well, they were giving out to me. So Aoife, Jonathan and my dad were all outside the Kingsley Hotel, and I stopped dead. And Aoife goes, what's fucking wrong with you? And I was like, I just don't want to go on anymore. And the three of them literally, would you move your effing legs? And I went, all right, Jesus Christ. So I kept on going again, but I remember going down the finish line of what I got a PB, and should have been happy. It was a horrible moment for me. And Daniel made a very good point, and it's actually, every time I've been like, oh, I stopped 5 times, or whatever. And I said, well, you did get going 5 times as well. So, and it's all this mental side to it. It's something that you kind of just go, yeah, sure, that's not that important. But it is actually vital when them moments do come, and we all know, and especially in marathons, they come a lot. So, I don't say, look, again, thanks Steve and Jonathan for shouting abuse at me, but it's so important doing all this, and mindfulness beforehand to get yourself ready for that hurt.
Yeah, even with just using that example, like when Damien said the story, he was like, oh, I was really hard on myself after it, I was really disappointed, and I just kind of said, didn't you get a personal best? He was like, yeah, and I was just like, you need to reframe that. So yeah, look, you've difficulties the same as anything. You could stop and walk for X distance or X amount of seconds, but it's the important thing is to keep going and have that drive. And I think you mentioned about building resilience. Like, resilience is built in those moments. So like for now, and for you going forward, that's a reference point that when your next race is and you're about to stop, you can think, oh look, I don't really need to stop, the body's okay, I kept going last time, I can go again. And I think that's really, really powerful. And it's just, I suppose, having that debrief, whether it be with your coach or your team, or if you're working with a specialist, is to have that debrief where you get across what you've done, but more importantly, that you're kind of getting the feedback of an unbiased person. Because realistically, if you're doing your own review yourself, it's really going to be biased, because you're either going to be hard on yourself, or you might think that, oh geez, I'm doing a great job, and you are doing things maybe not structured, you are just going to doing 1 or 2 runs or what it may be. So I think it's really important to, I suppose, have that accountability, and I suppose even just get the advice of people, whether it be reaching out on Instagram. If you have any tips there for me, yeah, no bother, there the podcast to share, whatever it may be.
Anyone have any questions for the two lads before we go on? No? All good. So we moved on to nutrition. All right, something that I am superb at. So we'll start off with, roughly the 12 weeks will take beforehand, right? Is there certain foods people should be looking at introducing into their diet, taking out of their diet, or, like the other day, and again, Daniel's at the moment, it's great timing, water. The lads were all drinking water on the podcast, and there was me and my can of Heineken, happy out. So a few hints and tips.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Dan. So just kind of with the marathon, to kind of break it down into simple terms, like mainly fueling and hydration would be kind of the 2 main key areas. From fueling, just making sure that you are eating enough. Like as the mileage does ramp up, you do need a lot more energy, and you do need a lot more from food. What I generally see is kind of people showing up with complaints of like massive overpowering sugar cravings. Like sugar cravings are normal to have, but like when it becomes like so overpowering and you're feeling really low and flat in energy at the end of the week, that tends to be kind of a sign that maybe I'm not actually eating enough throughout the day. Another kind of approach people will take is going super healthy with it. Going fruit and vegetables all the time. Like fruit and vegetables are great, definitely do include them. But there is definitely room for those kind of low fibre, really kind of sweet carbohydrate. and especially carbohydrate in particular is super important for running. As I was saying on the podcast the other night, protein is the kind of glamour macronutrient. Everybody loves protein, and it's not like if we're loading up on protein and high protein foods, it's not going to be great for energy. It's not going to be great for our stomach as well too. And just going back to the carbohydrate side of things, I'd happily shake anybody's hand today in the room if they could eat the amount of carbohydrates they need for a marathon from just vegetables alone. Like it's just super high volume. It'll back up the pipes really and stuff. It'll cause massive bloating like that. You won't be able to reach the amount of calories you actually need for the event. So the main thing kind of around that now is to start to practice around it, like see what carbohydrates agree with you during your run, and just kind of knowing how much in particular you actually need to fuel your run, and at what point you feel really good at out in your run, and also with recovery then as well too. And from the hydration side of things, like a lot of people again would show up to me and say, no, I never take water out on my runs. And even looking at Cork Marathon, if anybody has run that, it was one of the oddest days. I was standing on the side and I was roasting and sweating and I needed so much more water. So like you can imagine if you didn't practice with water, that like even that could be something that just causes an upset on the day. So, you know, bringing water out on the runs, like even stashing it somewhere that you're going to kind of even loop around again, like, you know, there's the belts and vests as well too that you can kind of trial out. It will be something just to kind of consider now at the moment as well.
And Dan, 2 litres is the magic number you hear for a lot of times with water for, you know, runners, and then like is that right, or should we be taking more?
Yeah, it should be more, definitely. So like baseline, you'd be looking at 30 to 35. Sorry. Baseline, you'd be looking at about 30 to 35 mil per kg, but like that can shoot up, you know, that definitely will shoot up depending on like sweat. Depending on sweat rates and how much you're actually losing during your run. You know, like you can reach numbers up to, you know, 45 to 55 mil per kg with running, and like taking the weather into consideration as well too. Like you will definitely need more than the 2 litres.
Foot actually got bored of water there, so it turns itself.
A lot of people
on.
do that with nutrition for some reason.
So coming up, you obviously the carb loading is the main thing you hear the week before the race, and you know, everything like that. But in the week of training, should people be practicing carb loading the day before their long runs, or you know, are we getting enough carbs really for eating healthy?
Well, so like as the training volume kind of increases, like the carb volume should also increase a little bit. So like over the span of 12 weeks, your stomach is gradually adapting to all that carbohydrate, and especially during the run too as well. That's the most important as well too, that it adapts to that. Like in terms of a carb load, it definitely would be beneficial to practice it like on the day. Like, you know, it's 10 to about 12 kg, 12 to 10 to about 10 grams of carbs per kg. So like, you know, if you're an 80 kg person, that could be 800 grams of carbs plus on the day before the marathon, which is a crazy amount of carbohydrates. And again, I challenge anybody to eat that in vegetables. Like, you will end up in hospital. So please don't. So, you know, like practicing around those kind of low fiber, kind of low residual kind of carbohydrates, like just today, you know, croissants and like all those kind of pastries. Definitely, like, you're able to hit that carbohydrate target a lot easier. And also, I was saying on the podcast, a lot of people will show up to me and say they've done carb loads before. It doesn't count if it was a bag of chips or Chinese the night before. That's not a proper carb load.
Dave, for yourself, like before races and race week and separate for week up to day, I mean, Do you practice, carb loading, or are you very particular on your diet into race week and stuff?
Yeah, so I suppose I spent the majority of my running career running the mile to 5k, which that wasn't a major concern, and only in the last 2 years now have I started running the half marathon, and all of my last 3 half marathons I have cramped, like not in the stump but leg cramps, and just definitely my nutrition side got exposed, hence like you just see me there, even some of the products I've started using there recently is the Morton, but so like even the other night there, like before the race, in the 5k race, like it's getting tidy with your nutrition and getting the timing of the nutrition right. So I was kind of a bit bad for late night eating, and then because I'd late night eat, I'd kind of say to myself, well, I can't have a big breakfast in the morning, and it was just, the cycle wasn't good. And it's amazing now in the last few weeks, having tidied it up, like even I'm not cramping on my long runs. My energy was really good the other night. Like I was very happy with my time. And it's all those, they're far more than 1%, they're far more than 1%. And they make a massive difference. And, the training is one thing, but like survival at the end of a half marathon or marathon is all down to fueling. And I got found out in my last 3 races, and I was on for a big PB in Berlin earlier this year, and I started cramping at 10k, so, and I had all the training technically done going into it, but you're never going to be, during training, putting your pressure under your body under the pressure that the race will put it under. So you're not really going to find out what's going to happen until race day. And there's a reason why you see these top athletes have spent so much time around fueling and strategy for that. So it's a major part. It's your energy source towards the back end of a race. And also how you feel coming into it. So I think if anyone hasn't spent any time, looking into that, it's absolutely, you owe it to yourself to go to a nutritionist or to figure out how to do it, because it's when you talk about half marathon and up, it's the name of the game.
Then we come to the fun part of running, which is the recovery. Damien, anyone who doesn't know, again, we have the Nortec boots out there. If anyone wants to throw them on, you're more than welcome to work away with them there as well, but we can do it afterwards as well. But Damien, recovery. So we all see your lovely studio outside with the Nortec boots, the ice cold baths, the saunas, the whole lot of it. How important is that in the 12 weeks of training?
So I have to try and separate myself from my sports nutritionist background and my S&C background with the business, but they do play a part. But the part that they actually play, the percentage of importance that they play, is something that for the sake of honesty and openness, I find people will be coming into me and they will be telling me, I'm using the ice bath, it's my way to recover, it's my way to feel good, bring about a degree of freshness. But the same people will be coming back, bits of niggles, low energy, not feeling great, and the conversation kind of expands out into what we've just heard here from David and Daniel, just in, so what's your hydration like, what's your diet like, what's your sleep like, all these kind of things. And so I do find that some people put the cart before the horse a little bit with coming into me. That's just I like to preface where a facility like mine actually sits in your programming. Absolutely, there's place for it. For somebody who's in the lead up to a marathon or in the lead up to a half marathon and putting in the miles each and every week, I'd first ask you to look at the volume of training, the volume or the amount of days in the week that you're training, and then look to work back from that to say, okay, do I need a full recovery day in my week, or can I work something into one of my training days where getting into the cryo spa baths to help reduce inflammation, to help, reduce any kind of maybe pain that we get from constant road running. Then using the sauna for, again, pain reduction, inflammation reduction, just to, I suppose, feel good all around. But I find a lot of people do find a huge benefit with the contrast water therapy, and there's a good bit of research out there showing the benefits of recovery with contrast water therapy, so going from cold to hot and back again. And then with the likes of the Normatec boots below, they're fantastic for mimicking our body's own natural waste product removal I suppose mechanisms or systems. They just do it at a much faster pace. So when it comes to working out, well, okay, do I need to be going into a recovery suite? Ideally, I'd love to say yes, absolutely. And if your training volume is high or even mid to high, it's certainly something from a recovery perspective you should be working into your week. I do find some people come into me once a month and they go, yep, there's my recovery for the month done. But if you're really looking to push things on, you have to look at it in the line with your training. Would you train once a month? If you're going out to compete in a marathon, you probably wouldn't. You need to train a lot more than that. So if you're looking to optimize your recovery, you need to be working these kind of things into your recovery plan a little bit more and a little bit more in line with your training. So to put it into perspective, however, we do need to look at the hierarchy of importance when it comes to our approach to recovery and our approach to feeling good and our all-round training. So if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, we should have a huge focus and emphasis on our sleep, followed fairly swiftly by our nutrition, then hydration. Then you should be looking at things like your strength conditioning, your active recovery, and then you start to get up to where you're really looking to try and hit the last 5% of your recovery, the last bit there on extra pain reduction, extra I suppose shortening the time for you to go from feeling pretty beat down to where you're feeling pretty good, and then there are a few other things beyond that. But there is a hierarchy here, and I feel that for my own clients and the S&C side and nutrition side of my business, a lot of people will put the recovery suite side of my business on a pedestal above the stuff that isn't sexy. Your sleep schedule, your sleep quality, your sleep hygiene, the quality of your diet, the routine to your diet, your hydration, and so on. So if you are going to be looking at something like my place, just know that it has a place, but it's not that top place. You're looking at the last 2, 3, 4, 5% of your plan there when you're looking at us.
I said to Damien on the podcast the other day, I was like, you really sell yourself really well, in fairness to Dave, I'll come back to you again because you're obviously the runner. Recovery for you, I know you do a lot of foam rolling, stretching and a whole lot of that, but how important is it to you?
Yeah, I always give the equation for growth: stress plus rest equals growth. So there's no growth without stress. There's no growth without stress, and there's no growth without rest. And my thing is that every time you run, you have to have some form of recovery afterwards. It's just that's the way it goes, because training takes out of the body. So especially for me, and I've noticed it, like I've gotten older. Like my foam roller goes everywhere with me, and I suggest you find there's lots of foam rollers on the market, and you find that one that works best for you. In my car there's always foam rollers, there's a stretching mat, and there's bands, and they're just there all the time, every day. And I will notice one day if I don't, even if it's an easy run, if I don't stretch or foam roll that evening, I'm getting out of bed the next morning and I'm a lot stiffer. That's just the way it goes. Again, as I said to you back earlier, the nature of running is impact. So every time you hit the ground, you're compressing the body. So after one run, you're stiff. Like if I get into the car there now after that run and I drive back down to Dungarvan, I'm going to be like a board getting out of the car. And if I don't do something this evening when I get back home to loosen out, I'm going to feel stiff in my session tomorrow. And it's not about, like we were talking about there, it's not about, the marathon is coming up now next week, I'm going to start doing my recovery. There's no point being, the benefit is recovering for each of the training, so you're getting the best out of the training. So that you best on race day. if you've been tight and stiff through your whole training block, and you loosen out for the day of the race, that's grand. You might be loose the day of the race, but you might have missed a lot of training benefits by not having been, recovered well for all your training sessions. So like I always say, like, what's the absorption of your training? It's a very hard thing to measure. Like it's a really hard thing to measure, and I think it's something that, like, until you start doing these things and you start noticing how sleep makes me feel, how good nutrition makes me feel, how the massage makes me feel, how the ice baths make me feel. One ice bath is going to do absolutely nothing for you. One session in Normatec boots is going to do absolutely nothing for you. Like, I mean, if I could have a pair of Normatec boots in my house at home every day, brilliant, I'd be using them. And I love going to, like, down in Dungarvan, we unfortunately we don't have a centre like that, but we have the hot pots that pull up at the beach. So I go down to them once a week for the sauna, and I use the ice bath, and that's really beneficial, and that's almost like a treat. It's like a spa, but like, you have to have your home recovery. You have to have your home recovery techniques every day, and I think they're the things that'll make the biggest impact. So yeah, remember that equation for growth: stress plus rest equals growth.
I have one question that's not for you, by the way. It's for, where is he? I saw Rory Hortags. So the question is, when is Rory getting his chest waxed? Sorry, that was just coming a question there from Anonymous. Thanks for it. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? What do you do on your rest days? So, I mean, I look forward to my rest days, so I'm just wondering, do you literally not do any kind of, what do you do on your rest days?
Yeah, so on my rest day, I do nothing. Yeah. So actually, even like, I won't even foam roll. I will do nothing. I'm not going near it. It's the day away from, I do my recovery stuff with my training stuff, and then and I take my rest day on a Saturday, because that's when everyone is free to hang out and do things, or if you family, you can go away and do stuff like that. And like, it's also too, like, part of stress is also keeping mental motivation. Like, that's the most important thing. Like, it's like, it's to be motivated, because I find when I start losing the motivation, actually tiredness creeps in quicker. Motivation is a great defense for tiredness, but like, so I remember somebody said before, true motivation is doing what you'd said you'd do when those days of motivation are gone, and so, the recovery days are key. So having those days off, going away, unwinding, switching off. So yeah, the foam roller doesn't come out in the recovery day.
Anybody else have any questions?
I might catch you fine gentlemen out on the hop now, but here goes. Any advice for women, in particular women of a certain age? Is there any different advice you give women?
Anyone else?
I might catch you out now.
Well, I just my little bit. My wife is a physio, and she specialises is particularly in pelvic floor. For women, and like, just the importance of that side. I'm not a specialist to speak on that now, but like, she has a lot of people come to the gym with her, and I think sometimes, particularly for women around pelvic floor, is first of all just getting a knowledge base on it. So sometimes you mightn't actually, as the saying goes, you only know what you know. So I think it's important to kind of educate yourself on that side of it. Again, I go back to saying running is impact based. So you're weakening the body. So I think, strengthening the pelvic floor area is probably a big area for females, and for males obviously as well.
Dan, yourself, is there any kind of any nutrition advice on for that?
Yeah, well, the kind of nutrition advice is very dependent really on the person, I suppose. Like, it definitely goes back to just the fueling and hydration side again. From a nutritional perspective, just watching things like iron and calcium, would be really important. Kind of bone health in females, like, as we age, like, that too can just be a big issue. So it's just making sure, especially because it's not a sunny country too, like, that you do have that vitamin D and calcium. And like if you are worried about iron levels or any kind of history of kind of like low iron, just keeping an eye on that too, and just getting blood work done if you're unsure.
Just on that topic, actually, we were going to do it a couple of weeks ago, but because of the holidays we didn't, but we have a women running special coming up. We always have people lined up. It's just getting people together to time it. So that will be coming up in the next few weeks. Share for people identified already.
That's great. Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions before we take a 5-minute break?
I just Damien mentioned there, just around raids as well too. So just like it can be in men as well too, but it's just like really under fueling in terms of your run, like really kind of not like having a fear kind of around even like the carbohydrate and not giving yourself enough, like over time. That can lead to like amenorrhea and missed periods like that as well too, which is something just to kind of watch out for. It's like I've heard people kind of like call periods like almost like the kind of sixth sense in terms of health, and if you are missing them, it can be a sign of like under fueling like that, and you know. That then too is linked with really poor bone mineral density, which can lead to really kind of easy breaks. And as I was mentioning, like the calcium and vitamin D, you really need to build up bone mineral density in the first kind of like 40 years of your life. Like it's really important. And that's where the kind of calcium and vitamin D comes in and fortifies, like really kind of builds that up, as well as like things like resistance training as well too, and fueling properly. So really restricting your intake, really restricting carbohydrate, and really feeling poor like in your runs. And if you're running constantly for a long time, it's something you're really committed to. Like definitely that fueling is something to really look into in the long run.
Right, we'll just take a quick break. When we come back from break, we have a raffle there. The lads at Various have given us a few spot prizes. So everyone, I think everyone got a ticket. If you didn't get a ticket, you give us a shout, and we'll give you a ticket then as well, alright? And please say a few guys, 10 right as well. We'll have a quick chat with the lads and numbers on as well in a minute as well.
A quick break, there won't be much longer.
Friday, we ended up being well over an hour and 20 minutes of talking. So what we're going to go is race week and post-race with it. I think what we'll do we're going to start with yourself, Daniel, on this one. Race week, I know everyone says straight off, don't introduce anything new on race week. And something that I kind of would have an interest in is mindfulness, which I did for again 1 week, which but it has had a part to play in race week for people to help somewhat get their mind right for the race.
Yeah, this was coming up to race week. This was nothing changes really from the previous weeks. You'll have your strategies that you've been using all along. But this was the fact, if you're using them previously, is you can kind of get into them quicker and kind of get the benefits of them quicker. So again, I think I said to you on Friday night, for athletes in any sport, I look at using it's the Headspace app, I think it is, but it's a progressive muscle relaxation. You actually find it on YouTube. So it's a simple exercise, and the more you do it, the more you can actually tap in to get that, I suppose, sense of relief, or that kind of relaxation that you need before a game, before a race. In terms of, I know you mentioned concentration the last day, so something like actually a squash ball. So there's a scientific, this was data on using a squash ball before an event. So it's basically 60 seconds, left hand contractions, it gets the right hand side of your brain firing, and it's been proven to increase concentration. And what you don't want is going into the race is where you're really, really nervous. If you're nervous, you're tense. If you're tense, then it could affect your running economy. And then all of a sudden you're kind of thinking, oh well, I'm not feeling great, or I won't do this or I won't do that. And it's being positive with yourself. I suppose it's having your affirmations and having your mantras. But it's kind of, in that instance too, there's going to be a dialogue where you're just constantly talking to yourself. You could have kind of moving goals. So like using the lads 10 miler there, they have the course mapped out, and you know that, point A to B to C to D. oh look, I'll just go, I get to point B and I get to point C, whatever it may be. And I suppose it's being present in the moment, and not letting things like environment, which could be weather or whatever else, kind of affect you kind of going along. Because little things will throw you off. And I suppose, as I said to you already, the brain and the mind will look for anything just to kind of get out of what they're trying to do.
You do a lot of work obviously with teams as well. Is there anything that individuals could learn from the team aspect in coming into the race week? Because I know, like, you know, championships coming up, we say, for the hurlers or the footballs, and the week is very much, you know, team meetings, you know, kind of getting everything set into place. Can runners learn anything from that aspect of it?
Yeah, I suppose the accountability piece is huge. So, like, regardless of whether you're part of a team or an individual athlete, it's holding yourself accountable. So if you're holding your teammates accountable, great. But again, it kind of goes back to where you're you've that self-awareness, and the self-reflection piece is kind of quite powerful there, because, you know, I suppose you want to kind of say, look, I've this done, I can control the controllables essentially, I'm not going to be surprised by anything. And it's just being honest with yourself. And I suppose, I think one of the lads mentioned earlier, you have your goal, which is great, but it's actually being important to have flexibility with the goal. So your goal, with the start of your training block, might be X, but by the end of it, come to the race, that might change slightly, and that isn't a bad thing. You're just you're rolling with the punches, because as I said, going back to your example, what you don't want is just to stop and give up and go, oh, I can't reach my goal. But you know, you have that kind of mindset where, it's with the growth mindset, where you're kind of going, okay, I can change this slightly and still get a massive benefit from it.
Dave, yourself, race week, how different is it to a normal week for you?
Yeah, it's very different. There's a different feeling in the body and mind. Definitely as the race is approaching, the nerves are starting to creep in and build. You can't not have nerves, because you care about something. I think it's accepting them is the key, and as people say, I think nerves is a good thing, because it means a lot to you. But it's just knowing how to get calm. It's not like letting them cloud you or over panic you. And I think sometimes what can happen when you're nervous and maybe the gun goes is you forget about your race plan. You get anxious, you start responding in the race to all the people around you. Next thing, you've gone through the first mile split and you're gone way faster than what you should have done, and you lose all concept, So I think all you can do leading into the race, the training is done. It's then grounding yourself. I think it's being honest with yourself. You can feel the anxiousness build. Also, too, not to worry. If you don't get a good night's sleep, that's actually natural. Very few people, Kipchoge doesn't even sleep the night before his marathon. That's just part of it. But the whole point is to have the good recovery coming into it. And just look at nerves as a positive thing. Reframe the wording you use and the thinking you use on it. And I think the Headspace apps and all that, I've used them in the past, and in recent years now I have my own techniques that I do. Before my race on Friday night, before I headed down to New Ross, just went into the bedroom, swung the legs up on the backboard, No, and I just lay in the bed and I just allowed myself to because sometimes, when you start getting anxious, you find it hard to sit down. So it's just to relax, and I also, the minute I start my warm-up, I start thinking about just grounding myself. So I make sure to think that my mind isn't racing, because when my mind starts racing when I come into a race, then the game plan goes out the window and my energy has gone out the window, and then next thing I'm in the race and I'm not racing, I'm just running. But I also think too, that takes practice. That's not something that you can just try and conquer in the first race. So I think it's like everything, you need to go through a few races, you need to practice it, and just almost look at it as a challenge.
See what works for you. I think that what works for me will work for you, won't work for you, and vice versa. And Daniel, again, Joey, some people say they want a certain phrase or something in their head before that it's right, it starts now.
What I like, my thing is when I'm on the starting line, it's true, you actually, the race is against yourself, because especially everyone here running a marathon, like there's going to be plenty people faster than you and plenty people slower than you. So like you just got to run your own race. But when I'm standing on the starting line, like what I'm saying to myself is relax, relax, relax. And I actually consciously pull back on that first 400 meters, pull back on that first kilometer, because it's going to be naturally faster anyway because of the mass start. You're getting dragged along, the crowd, the cheering, everything. And it's in that first 3 minutes of a race you can completely screw the race up on yourself. Because if you start off way faster than you should, what ends up happening is the heart rate is spiked and you're flustered, and it's very hard to find your rhythm. So I always actually would start a race as if it was a training run and settle, and then get into your flow.
Daniel, would you do a lot of work with people for that side of it, of the affirmation, Daniel?
Yeah, so you'd like all great points. You'd because use visualization anyway and get them to picture the start of that race. How are they going to start that race? And I suppose we'll say obviously my area is the mental side of things, but you'd get them to kind of plan that with their coach. You know, how is that going to look like? What it's going to look like? And it's just really important that, you know, we getting flustered. It's really important that we kind of stay calm and stay present in the moment. And you have your strategies that you've already used. You have your reference points, and you're just looking to keep it really, really simple, really relaxed. And I suppose the big thing is being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and that's the big thing I'd stress. So it's easy to kind of go and, you know, you're really rested and you're on a lovely day and you go out for your run, but you want to challenge yourself you want to challenge yourself, like you say, come back from work, you're wrecked tired, you have to feed the kids, so you're going to do your run then, and that's when you come back, you reflect and you use that for your strategy then, kind of go forward, and you might use 10 different strategies, could even be more, depends on the individual, but you're doing it from day dot. So when you come to the race, as we said, you've planned out, you know exactly what you're doing, keep it nice and slow, whatever it may be.
Dan, if you, planning race week for nutrition wise, how important is it for people to get that practice, obviously in the 12 weeks beforehand, but to get it dialed in?
Yeah, so the main thing kind of at that stage is not to change anything really. Know what carbohydrates that you're having throughout the race, know how much water you can take on as well throughout the race. If you make major changes kind of at that stage, it can, you know, cause stomach upsets, and just kind of something like that could ruin your day. A big part of it too is actually knowing the map and the route that you're running, all the different hydration spots, all the different, you know, Lucozade Sport stops. Because it tends to be a lot more kind of just general water spots than actual, you know, sport drink spots. There's about 3 to 4 I think on Dublin, and then also knowing there's gels being given out as well too, and I think it's high 5 this year for Dublin, so you know, if you've never had that before, it mightn't agree with your stomach, you just don't know. So it's not saying you should go with that gel, you go with whatever gel kind of works for you, and even if gels don't work, having a hydration strategy around that then too with your sports drinks. So that's what I'd be kind of planning, that's what I'd know before kind of going in, but the big message is not to change anything really.
One thing I would say about gels as well, you might not use that gel at the race, but it's also handy to try it on your training run in an emergency gel, just in case you drop your gels. At least you know that you can actually take that gel out on the course, so it is worth. I don't think it's high 5, I think it's Enervit, which is rubbish by the way, but that's a different story. So, but you know, just try it, just to be on the safe side, and make sure it does fit your stomach as well for that. Damien, race week for you, I would presume it's a quiet week. I think yours is most probably post-race, the most of it.
Well, post-race, you're certainly going to see some benefits in pain reduction and that, but it's just to mirror what the lads have said. If you have a plan leading up to the race, then the week of, you're not trying to change anything massively. You might get some benefits from coming in to use the cryo spas and contrast water therapy is a fantastic one there for letting people to feel quite recovered in a very short space of time. The same with the Normatec boots there, and the hip attachments that a lot of people get a lot of pain relief from, which can be fantastic there the week leading in. The week afterwards then, or post-race, then it's just, I suppose, trying to manage that pain load and kind of reduce that, the leftover impact from the race. But certainly the week of is something that you could have, you could get a benefit from coming into us. But I would much rather it was something that was part of your training. It was something you worked in to your week. Like David mentioned, he gets out to the sauna and see there once a week and looks at it like a treat. But if that's not an option for you, what we have inside as well is fantastic, and it's a very quick and easy way to just kind of give yourself that little bit of a refreshness there week in, week out in the lead up to your race.
So before we move on to the post-race section, what we'll do is we're just going to do the competition at the moment. Brian, there's a hat behind you there, there's the tickets in it. Now, there is a few tickets went into it that don't exist, so we will call out if there's a ticket, don't worry about it. So we have some very good prizes thanks to the lads. Daniel has given us, So Daniel has given us 2 of his journals that we're going to give away. So Daniel, I'll just give you a quick, if you want to give a quick of the journal there before we go.
Yeah, I suppose I put it together just in mind with, I suppose, working with individual athletes or teams, that it's, I suppose, an affordable way for an individual to bring that extra kind of mental part to their game. So with it kind of lasts a period of 6 months. At the start of it, you have your accountability contract to yourself. You look at determine your values, your affirmations. You have your 6-month period or your weekly period in. So you Monday to Friday, you list out what your activities are. You have your performance. What's the next page there, Damien? Performance what? Performance preparation. So we're looking at all aspects of nutritional, mental, physical. And next to that, then you have your performance wheel and your life balance wheel. So you're looking at, there's a real strong wellness part of it. After every 4 weeks, there's a challenge then to reaffirm your values or your visualization exercises. And at the back of the journal, then there is a number of tools. So there's a model like the CA model for dealing with disappointment. So you ask yourself, what can you control, what can you influence, and what can you accept? But look, there's a few there. If anyone wants to have a look at them, you're more than welcome.
Post-race, Damien, I'm going to start with you, mainly because most people, you said it the last time as well, after Cork you saw a massive influx of people with it.
So we were pretty much out the door after the Cork Marathon. I'm not sure if it was because people were so burnt from the sun that day or not, but there was a lot of people in that day and the following few days afterwards with just trying to get themselves back to, I suppose, to being pain-free, and a lot of people did genuinely find a lot of benefit from it. But again, like Dave mentioned earlier, just the once off, it's only going to bring about so much, I suppose, a certain amount or a small amount of recovery. So I did find people coming back 2 or 3 times that week, especially people who were really going after, big times, people who were going after a serious, race for themselves. They took it on themselves to give themselves that week of post-race to get in and out as often as they could to bring themselves back to normal. So that's something that I suppose I'm learning as I'm going with the business, but that a lot of people do have that kind of approach post-race.
Is there anything else that people can look at from that side, even at home, we say, that they can help to aid the recovery?
Active recovery, movement. I suppose the common thing is post-race you'll find a pint in hand and that kind of thing, making sure that you eat after a race. But then in general, the few days after the race, you know, if you're running on a Sunday there, that you're not just going to work on Monday and sitting down, and that's your whole week of sitting down. It's going to take you quite a while to get back feeling good, get back feeling mobile. So just making sure that you do work out time in that week, for whether it be going for a walk, whether it be going for a short, light run, whether it be getting into the gym, getting into the likes of ourselves, you know, that it's just having a plan in place. Is it the same way as you have a plan in place for your 12-16 weeks leading in, there should be a post-race plan there as well. So active recovery is massive there.
Dan, yourself, food-wise, you know, vitamin-wise, we'd say, hydration-wise, post-race. I know obviously the most important is beer straight after it, straight in, Guinness, Heineken, you know, these are vital to recovery. But is there anything else people should look after?
That's what I was going to say. Post-race nutrition always seems to take a back foot. So yeah, definitely do celebrate. Like, you have my permission to celebrate afterwards. If you're going to do it from like a scientific standpoint, that is where kind of protein does come in. So just weight, protein, it's there for the recovery of muscle. So it's not that you have to, the minute you finish a race, have a massive whey protein shake. It's not necessarily needed, but like within that kind of 2 hour kind of window after finishing a race, definitely do consume a protein source, and also in line with a carbohydrate source. So both of those together will improve your post-race kind of nutrition. So generally with your protein sources, you're looking at dairy, meat, eggs, fish. And then like with your carbohydrate source, like that could be pasta, rice, and potatoes, something like that. So generally, like, you know, if you're having like a dinner or lunch kind of after a race, that would really help that kind of recovery after. But again, it comes down to like meeting your caloric needs for the day. So, you know, if you have that protein and carbohydrate after the race, but you're still not meeting the actual fuel amount you need for the day, then, you know, that's going to limit your recovery. So definitely just consuming enough and then worrying about what you're eating kind of pre like is kind of the hierarchy of importance there. With carbohydrate, why that's kind of needed is because when we run, like carbohydrate, when it stores in the body, is glycogen that draws in water. When we run, that glycogen kind of gets used up. I've used the example kind of before. It's almost like I just say like a sponge, or like even honeycomb, like that. You know, just with a sponge, if you imagine the muscle when it's full of carbohydrate, that it's like it's wet. It's after kind of expanding. Once we kind of start running, that kind of water, it starts kind of drying up, and you're left with like a really kind of just small dry sponge. The carbohydrate introduction after the race kind of just replenishes that, and that in line then with the kind of muscle recovery from the protein just will really give you the best chance at recovery afterwards.
There is the kind of the marketing ploys. 20 minutes after your run, you need to get, you know, one of the recovery drinks in. As I said to you on Friday, I'm a marketer's dream. Like, you know, oh Jesus, I've 19 minutes now, I'll either have it, or, you know, beetroot the week before a race, you know, every day take it. Oh Jesus, yeah, I'll chance it. But is that right, or is that just pure marketing?
So like it does help to, like, there's no kind of magic window with like bringing in protein. Like, obviously if you're trying to hit a calorie target, then like the sooner you can eat and the sooner you can get in calories, the easier it is to hit that by the end of the day. Like I wouldn't go like fasting or anything after a run. Like, it definitely is important to get something in, but within that, you know, 2 hour window, because when you finish a run too, you know, your stomach will be all over the place as well, and you mightn't even feel like eating that much. So, you know, when you come down gradually off that high, just try and get in some food if you can. As well as all the celebratory points as well too, like, yeah. But yeah, like, just try and get in food within that kind of 2 hour window.
Daniel, yourself, you mentioned it earlier, it's probably for the race afterwards, is the sitting down and actually looking back at how the race went and how that training block, I think, went as well.
Yeah, so like again, going back to the journal, but you'll have your dial or your I suppose what you've done for the entire block, and you need to go back and reflect on what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and be able to tweak it. But I suppose it's important too to remember that when the race is ran, it's ran. There's no point, going over a mistake or, I suppose a negative essentially. And it's really, really important to acknowledge your small wins and your big win. Your big win is completing the race, and all the small wins kind of going up to it. Because if you dwell in it and you make the whole thing a negative, which it won't be, it could affect how you prepare and how you go into the next race. And it's just important too to kind of sit back, give yourself a pat on the back, and just say well done.
Dave, yourself, what's post race?
So I suppose if you're, I'm sure people plan on racing again once this race is over, and the cruelness of getting into shape and getting out of shape is it takes a lot longer to get into shape and it takes overnight to get out of shape, So just have some sort of a plan, have your down week in that, but don't let weeks go by before you decide to get back on the horse again, because unfortunately fitness isn't always money in the bank. It's only there when you keep putting it in. So if you plan on doing a marathon or a race again another couple of months' time, just be mindful of that and don't let all the good work that you've done go to waste. So that would be my thing. And then also, I think just from an injury point of view, the risk of injury is at highest when coming back off breaks. So just be careful of the whole deloading process. So take your few days recovery, but don't be afraid. I think the active recovery is the best form of recovery. And take your downtime, but make a plan to get back again, because unfortunately, if you do a marathon once a year and you just do a 3 month training block into it, you're never really going to progress your fitness. It's the consistency over time. Again, I go back to saying 52 weeks in the year at a far less intensity and volume is far better than 12 weeks at higher volume and intensity.
What's your famous saying again? Stay.
Oh yeah, we stay ready so we don't have to get ready.
Right, Brian, do you have a question that we can ask for the competition?
Right, on the spot here. How many marathons have I done? Might be an easy one. First answer will get a prize soon.
4.
9.
20.
Yes, so.
5.
17. No. 15.
12.
No.
11.
15.
This will make it easy. 7.
8.
3.
7. Yeah.
5.
Are we double figures?
We're somewhere between 10 and 15. 13. 13.
Right.
What prize is that?
So that's the group session for up to 5 people for the your Arish. Does anybody have any questions for the lads? Or does anybody want to know?
Earlier this week, morning of the race, having all the coke boxes on, all good. We included that number.
So cereal is like a big one. I'm mad on pushing cereal because it's just easy to eat, especially morning and evening. Because marathons are on really early, it's very light on the stomach. So definitely, go for it. Generally, you'd want to be it's about 1 to about 4 grams per kg of carbohydrate. You'd want the kind of morning beforehand. Which if you multiply 4 by body weight, it's a lot of carbohydrates still. So mix in things like Cocoa Pops with even orange juice, honey, pancakes and pastries. All those are really good on the stomach, even the morning before. So yeah, definitely go for the Cocoa Pops.
Anybody else? Whoever's asked a question, I know you've asked them as well. We have hats here that we're going to get people, if anyone asks a question. If anybody else have a question, it's just bravery, lads. It's great. But if not, we have just one more competition. Thanks to St. Finbarr's, they've given us an entry for their race next Sunday. So the competition is going to be, who can guess how many episodes the Runner's Diary podcast have done so far?
16.
55. So you have to pass. You can give it to someone if you whoever you want as well. So you've won the entry to St. Finn Paris 10 mile. So. I think with that we'll finish up if anyone else has no questions. Are we all okay? Again, a massive thank you to Tracy from Clayton Silver Springs for putting this on. So a round of applause for Tracy, please. There she is. Thanks, Tracy. She's a great supporter of us, so we really, really, really appreciate it. To the four lads, really thank you so much to David, Daniel, Dan, and Damien. We really appreciate it. Come on and the expertise in it. The lads will be here for a few minutes. If you have any questions, come away and pop up to them. There's no problems. They have the leaflets outside as well if anybody wants to pick them up. But we really appreciate it, and mostly we appreciate, obviously, you all listening. We will really appreciate if you could just share the show as much as you possibly can. Just a quick one as well for you. We are going down the line soon, hopefully, of kind of sponsorship for the show. That's not going to be races. We never want to charge races for any of this. We're just looking for individuals or companies, and what the reason we're looking for is because we want to go more along the lines of YouTube, and we want to go along the lines of actually improving our own equipment. Myself and Brian do it all individually ourselves, and we have to come to a point where we have to put a stop to it because our wives are giving out to us. We also, so if anybody does have any connections or anything like that, please let them know. We have packages which we can talk through people. It's nothing major. You can sponsor parts of the show, you can sponsor t-shirts, there's things like that. So just to bear that in mind, we're not going to be pushing anything on it, so don't worry. Also, everyone will know as well, Go Sports Teamwear, we have our gear on that. If anybody wants to go online and purchase some of that gear as well that we have. There's t-shirts, jumpers, hats, and kind of a few other items on it as well, so it's on Go Sports Teamwear as well. But with that, thank you very, very, very much. We really appreciate it, and we hope you got some information out of it, and we will see you all again hopefully very shortly.